Hello, hope you're ready for the next stage of the leaping hare. So just doing a recap now. On the last video I showed you the eye detail and the face, and I explained that I wanted to take a little bit more time to tighten up all of the needle felting using the twisted pale blue needle. Just to tighten everything up. So I have achieved that, and I've brought some little extra colours here. So within your kit you have this the underbelly section that's got a darker wool here that you can use for some of the shadowing, and some of the colours that we had over from the little bundles with the nose section, the mouse colour and things like that. I've just added a few little highlights here. So do have a play around with adding a little bit more colour. So I'm happy with where I am now. When I look at the head, you know, the eye is slightly larger than what this is. And what I've decided is, when I look at my other design as well, there's definitely a difference in the head shape. This one has got more of the ball shape at the back and scoop, and this one I've tried to go more for that slope. Now it looks like I need to build the top section up here, which I will do later when we add the ears. So the ears will go into the back, and once they're attached in, I'd need to put an extra piece of wool over the top anyway, and in between those ears, just to sort of cover the attachment. So I'm going to get myself to have a bit more height there. So let's leave that for now. What I will do is I will go on to add in a little bit more detail before we move on to the next stage. Now, in the last video I said we were going to do the ears, and that's just me being eager to get onto the ears section, but I think it makes sense whilst we have this core work to start doing the body in this video tutorial, and then we'll add the ears to the end. So yeah, I'm happy with where we are. Now, if I look at this, you can see there's a little lighter highlight around this eye and down here. Now, I haven't added that to this design. Now, you may not want to. You may be quite happy with the face and the shading that you've got, and that's going to be absolutely beautiful and fine. But if you do want to add a little bit of colour, again, we can keep layering up as long as you keep the size of this head relatively small in comparison to the body. You know, I don't want this adding more and more wool and then it just becomes too big. But one of the suggestions here, just to get a little bit more of a, yeah, there's just a little bit more of a curve underneath than maybe I have here. So this is a suggestion. So what I've done is I have got some of the base colour, the mouse colour, and just put two little strips here. And then what I wanted to do, so if I use this one first, this little section here, just to give you an idea. So again, it's always about playing and experimenting when we do these pieces. So because I've got a lighter strip of core wool, only very light, that sits over the top of here, what I want to do is, if I lay this piece on the eye here and on the cheek, and what I want to do is just lightly needle felt here. Okay, so by just doing the needle felt there, what you'll see is when I pull this back, it's going to give me that little highlight there, okay? And it's giving me that extra little wool that I need, or I think I need at the moment. If I'm not happy, it's really easy. We just take this piece off. So let's tap that into shape. So although it was a long piece, what I'm doing is I'm curling this around the eye on this side. Okay, and then I'll do the same on here and just bring that down. Okay, so it's just a case of playing around. Now, I didn't do this on the example hare. And this is why when you make needle felting projects, no two are ever the same anyway, but I do like it where you can have different sort of styles. Maybe they're only subtle changes. But see what you think anyway. So now as I've got that colour here, it's got a little bit that's coming down there. So maybe what I do is I just curl that downwards. So I definitely need to spend some time tidying that up, but it's given me a little bit more of a difference. And if I feel that the cream or the light here, the highlight that I've put on in core wool, is coming too far down into the face, then a quick fix on that is pulling a little bit more of the base colour, and you could just place that over the top, just a small amount, just sitting on the underside of that cream section, so it just makes it blend a little bit more. So I'll just add that in. So I'll come back and finish this later, because as you know, I like to have quite a smooth finish when it comes to my short fibre needle felted projects. But it's just a suggestion there for you. So it's just added something a little bit different to it. So I quite like that. And it's definitely a progression from the original one. Let's quickly flip to the other side where it's not added. So that's where you could make a decision. Keep it as it is, or add a little bit more on the under cheek with a highlight. So just to recap for the other side, so I will have a very thin piece here, which is small, and then this is so translucent, that little piece. And what I would suggest you do is when you have a piece like this, just place it upside down and sort of turn it over, so it's thinner here at the end, which I quite like because I want that thinness just to go into the nose. I don't want to build up that nose section, and that would just go into the back there. So by placing that there, then I roughly know that the cream line needs to go round about there. Okay, so that is what I'll do. I'll just place that little piece in. Now, for those that have worked with me for a while, I do have a tendency to add detail. I love detail. So this wasn't even part of the original plan, but you know, we've got the wool. I've seen some inspiration that I like, and it just changes things. And that's how I tend to work on all of my projects. There we go. So I've added that next piece. I may as well place it on here and we'll tidy up later. So do the same again. So just a light attachment just to secure it into place on the underside. Okay, and then what I'll do is just peel that back, curl this section up. Okay, curl that up a little bit. And And then this needs to curl up somewhat. And I just want to angle that down a little bit more. So again, that might be a little bit more exaggerated. That's quite subtle on that side, isn't it? So again, when you're working on two opposite sides, one always works better than the other. So I would say the other side is a nicer finish. And this one's a little bit more protruding there, so let's just needle felt this in and compact. And again, it's a great way of putting that curve on that jawline if you didn't have it with your sculpture. So I'll just flatten this a little bit. And I'm just very gently breaking up what was like a harsh line. And then what I want to do is take another tiny wisp of the base colour, and that's going to really work well just to soften that highlight around the eye. So definitely more work that is going to be needed in just tidying up these sections. I may add a little bit more just to that bit there that's creeping in into the back of the head. But I do quite like that little finish to it. So let's get on to the body shape now, and the body colour. So what I want to do, I'm going to start with covering the central body, and I'll use this pad. So if you go to your wool, I've got a feeling I've provided lots of you with excess quantities of this gorgeous fibre, and if that's the case, then do you know what, it was meant to be, and you possibly meant to make another hare, so that's fine. So I'm going to take a piece here that is roughly just to the back of the neck, and I'll take it to the tail, so about there. Just pull that length off. Okay, there's a few little bits that are just extras. So lie it with the fibres long. Okay, and this is where I would suggest a multi-tool. So by multi-tool, you've got options. So some of you may have the wooden handle with the 4 needles, which does work really well. It's the only time I use it when this hand is well out of the way. And you can see I've not needed to support the wool because this brush pad actually takes those fibres in and holds it in place for me. Okay. Or you use the clover pen, which is probably a little bit slower than the wooden handle. And the final option is your single green needle. I would probably use that. So that's going to take you a little bit more time. So because I want to progress quickly in this tutorial for you, I'm going to use this. So I've got this bit overhanging. I'm going to support the wool as I tease it off. Okay. And then this bit that wasn't done, just shuffle it down. Okay, and what I may do, because it's just piece there, I'll add another little section there. this piece is good if you've had a hard day and you want to just get rid of a few stresses of life. I always find this quite good fun. So again, we'll support that. I'll move it. I want to get the end sections in. Making sure I've got the ends here. And so we're not too far off now. So what I want to do is let's take this back to the body, because by flattening it out, I'm sure this is increased and lengthened that, which is absolutely fine. So that would then sort of sit on the bottom, and this would be the back to about there. And I can decide then whether I want to go up on this side and bring those two pieces around the arms. But what I do want is I want a darker stripe down the center of this piece. So let's just have a look. So centrally here, we want to add more wool. So if you have the underbelly and the shadow, so the underbelly is the dark fawn that really complements this well. And then we have this mixed brown. Now let me just have a little look. It's a dark beige. 922 is the code, and it's from Norwegian wool. It's part of the Bergschaft range. So I really quite like this, but we only need a tiny, tiny bit because it really complements it quite well. We don't want something too harsh. So again, let's just open these fibres. Okay. And it may be that I even half that. Let's have a little look. I can add more later. So let's get our multi-tool and let's just put the dark piece. Yeah, I think I'll add another little layer there. I find it easier on some projects by making a pelt for the body and then adding it on, especially when you're adding tones and different colours, rather than putting all this wool and attaching it to the body. If you find that it's too blocky, you can very carefully use your needle or a pin and just stroke the edge of the fibre, because as you're needle felting, what's happening, it's compacting it in and it's bringing it in. So sometimes that layered piece that was here can come back, and then it forms like almost like a bit of a straight line or a curved line. And what I want to do is just ruffle that out a little bit more so it looks more natural. So can you see on this side, I mean, it's very subtle, so I'm hoping the camera brings it up, but picks this up, but it's definitely more subtle now here, where you've got quite a sharpness between the two. So we'll do the same on this side. Just bring them out slightly. Okay. And then now that we have that piece, I'll move that to one side. We're going to take our lovely hare and we'll place that at the tail in that section. And then we want to just make sure that that's central. So whilst I've got it in that position and it's central to the back, that stripe, like I say, it's very, very subtle. But as a needle felter, when I look at other people's work, I like the small details, and sometimes it is subtle, but I do appreciate that, and I think it adds to the realistic effect. Okay, so we're getting to that tail now. So now you can start to use your fingers. Okay, and then it's just a case of pushing the wool into the sculpture that you've spent hours creating. So you're just laying the coat on top. Okay, so for this section here, what I would do potentially, you can use your scissors. So I may just snip that. So what it allows me to do is just take that piece onto the back leg. And this section, you can either cut that off or you can just fold it slightly, because it does need an underside. So I want to put the really white wool that we've got. So again, stroke the wool that you've got, stroke it into place. Now it might not cover the whole of this piece, but it'll definitely give you a good attachment to that back leg, which is why this little technique is really quick and easy to do, I think. Okay, so we do the same on this side. Just want to snip there and take that wool around the leg. So remember, support and sweep your fingers over the sculpture and the wool so that you've got a nice sort of stretch, not stretching the fibers too much, but you're just holding them into place. So this little bit here, I'll needle felt a bit more, but I'm going to leave that just at the minute because I want to put the tail section later on that. Okay, so let's leave that. These bits, you can sort of pull the armature to one side just to get these pieces in position. Now let's have a look what I did on here. I think I did wrap the section. You'll see that bit needed to be finished. When I get to that leg, I will do that. But you can leave the inside of the legs cream. So for example, this side where it only just covers, that would be okay to leave that part of the leg in the core wool. I probably would add a little bit more just to this section here. But if they're different, like I have got them there, then I might just trim that away. I'll decide on the underside later. So look, pretty quick, eh? So now, continue to travel. And it may help to move to the multi-tool at this point. And then let's get to the neck section. So I'll take this up as high as I can. And then the same here. So I will take my scissors. Oops. Just cut a little snip there. And I'll got the snip there. So now what I can do is just, it's probably easier with a single needle when you're trying to position it into place. And also when it comes to the arms, it's a little bit trickier to use the multi-tool, I find, when you've got quite a bit of wire in the way. So again, don't forget about that gorgeous shape that you created earlier. And same on this side. Oops, look, he's ready to leap off the table already. I haven't even finished him. Because obviously we are doing the right thing here. I do like this project. I think it's a really sort of elegant style. And I've not got, it's one of those pieces that I wouldn't get bored with making this again and again, really. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but I can make a project and then once I've done it, and I'm ready, you know, to move on to something new, and not particularly in a rush to repeat it unless it was a commission and I was asked to do it. But every so often there's projects that you just have that, ooh, I feel like doing that again or making another one. I know the brown bear, the walking bear, was a little bit like that for some of the makers. And I've got a feeling, you know, this could be similar for some of you. So let's just move that around on the arm. So I'm not too bothered about these parts, because when we get to the paw section, then what I want to do is we will add the wool and that will sort of graduate up to that piece. So I'm happy just to leave this at the shoulder length. And you'll notice there's a little bit of a core wool there. So I'm just going to tease a bit more of the wool just to patch into that section. And then you can decide this is just like a small amount. I can just push that in and it's not going to change the effect on that head. It's a little bit thicker on this side, so we just push that in and see what you think. And I don't think that's going to change anything too much. So again, if there's a line there where we're connecting, just stroke those fibres out and attach on a side angle so that you're blending them on the top, and then you can go down. And then I'll just brush that over the top. So I've quickly put that cover on. So on screen now, it's you know, I'm sure it's looking quite well for you now. You're quite happy with that. But again, there's little bits of bagginess, which I would prefer to continue with this. So I may spend again another half an hour, 40 minutes tidying that up. But there's no need to do that for the purpose of this tutorial, because I know that you're going to do that work anyway. Let's then have a look at the shadowing. So if you remember, we talked about these, this darker colour, this dark mix from Norwegian wool. So then what I might do is just place a small amount around that section. The other thing to say, when I'm talking about smoothing this out, there's part of me that quite likes the fluffiness of this because it feels a little bit like fur. So you could even leave it a little bit fluffier and not as smooth as what I would normally do, and that would be fine. Remember, if it starts to get too blocky, that line, this is just a hat pin, so it's quite strong and I would say better than using your needle, because we don't want to bend the brittle needles. Oops. So these are all suggestions that I'm making. If it's too harsh, you just simply take that back off again. But if you do like what you've added, if you think it is harsh but you still want it there and you've tried to break that up, another suggestion might be taking a tiny wisp again, almost invisible to the eye, and just place that over the top of that line. So again, it just softens it. So you're really taking care with these little pieces now. You're thinking about, you know, hold it away, have a really good look. So there's some white pieces in this section, so I'm just going to take those out. That's better. Perfect. And so we'll do the same on this side. So again, just bounce a little bit, and I'll just put a little bit of darkness just underneath that section there. So we've got a little bit of shadowing. They complement each other so well, these colours. Looking good now. Happy with that. So I'd repeat this on the other side, but I won't do that for the tutorial because I want to move you ahead. So now what I would do, we're presuming both sides have been done, and I'm not too worried at the moment about the inside of this. There is a slight difference here. That sort of side is just showing the underbelly, and this side is showing a little bit, but it's certainly longer, if that makes sense, fractionally on this side. So you can do one or two things. You can either pull that off or just leave it. So I'm going to take the dark fawn now for the underbelly. So I'll move to the side, and that could just get attached down like that, and we could needle felt on to that body. But I find it easier sometimes. I'll just make sure. Quite a thick piece, this one. Just pull it flat a bit, and I'm going to multi-tool again. I like to make sure that these fibres, there's some entanglement of fibres before it even touches the body. Again, take off. And then we can twist on the other side. Can you see it's picked up a little bit of darkness that was on here? So that's another thing, when you are mixing colours, you may want to brush your pad. Let me have a look around if I've got the correct tool for that. No, of course I've not. It is here somewhere, but there is a sort of a little rake that comes with this that you can use just to clean. So it doesn't make a difference to this project, but always good to point these things out to you. So I'm going to carry on adding some more needle felt to this section, and we'll just So I've gone over, this is the third run here just to get those fibres together. So I may not need the whole of this, but I can start to place that on the underside now. So it's exactly as we did before. So let's just tap and place. Now, if you wanted the underside to be lighter, I suppose you could leave it in the core wool, or you could go for just the fawn colour from World of Wool rather than the dark fawn if you wanted it a little bit lighter. I quite like the cream with this mouse. I think it works quite well. So again, we'll just take that up there. And I'm going to just pull that wool and just press that through there. Okay. Oops. We've got the back door open today as I'm doing these tutorials, so that's why the door keeps banging in the background. And I'm just going to tuck that in here. And then at the front, just tease those pieces up here. And then what I want to do with this, because this is going to be too thick to go around the other side, hold and support what you've needle felted and just pull. You can cut if you want to, but I quite like the jaggedness of this. If you pull little bits off. And it may be that if you haven't needle felted this down, which I haven't done on that section, you could just tuck that underneath. Are you with me? So again, just so if that's been put down a little bit too much, just pull it up slightly under that section. And then I'll needle felt that down. So I think it's just a neater finish. So there's too much wool in this corner. So I'm just going to cut that off. And I'll just lift slightly. Excuse me. Excuse me again. I think all the fibres as I'm pulling them off are floating and tickling my nose. So again, if that's too harsh, again, let's get that little hat pin and just tease it out a little bit more. And then I'll go to the multi-tool now. And firm that in. And that would be the same on the other side. So again, here, I don't need all this section. I'll just lift slightly. Push. And then bring that back over. And the same here on that arm, underarm. Now you could continue to travel this little bit up here if you wanted to on that leg. Don't see a problem with that. Again, just bring those fibres over the top. When it comes to the paws, what we're going to do is we'll mix a little bit of this colour with core wool and this colour so it becomes lighter. So once you've got that lightness on here, we can travel that up and bring that into those underarms. So don't worry, they're very different, as you can see. I'll focus on that later. We'll just do the same with this, so that little bit of wool just seems to fit quite nicely. Then, just by sheer luck. And so this piece is going to be way too long there, so I either gently lift that piece up and brush it underneath, or you just trim some of that off. And then I'll place that back down. So I think that's quite a quick way of adding body colour to this piece. So what I want to do now is, I'll just take a little bit of that off actually. What I want to do is just tighten things up a little bit with the felting here as I progress. So I'll continue to do that afterwards. So let's look at this tail now. So in your kits or your packs, there is this lovely, I think it's called Snowdrop, or it's a really bright white. So again, you've probably enough for 3 tails here. But if we open that part and start to needle felt, so just keep feeling. If you're losing the shape, we know it's sort of there to about that point. And take your time, because you're going to feel the wire. So I'm pushing in at the side on the top to the tip. Okay. And so what we can decide here is, let's pull that back a little bit and just carry some of that over. And then with this, what I'll do is I'm just going to fold that in slightly, like that. And then these loose fibres can come back down. I'm not too bothered about this being a tight needle felt, because I like the fluffiness on here. And so then with this piece, again, we just tease the fibres out over the top. And then you can start to just shape the end of that tail and make a decision whether you snip that piece off. I'm going to just push this down onto my mat and just push those fibres together, because they're quite fine. So I've got a feeling I can just tap those back in and use those. Yeah, that's worked. I can hear it catching the armature every so often. So if you want to tighten this up, you've a couple of options. You can do it between your fingers, but please be careful. Or if you've got a little card, you could use that and balance on there. So That just means that you're getting a really nice tight felt of the wool and attachment to that core work underneath there. And it's got that little highlight and that pop of white wool underneath that tail. So do play around with the tail. What we can do, and I noticed this when I was working on this design, that I should have maybe used a little bit more of this grey just on that top section there. So we know that we've got a little bit of brown, it's very subtle in there, but if you have got your grey to hand, which I've said that out loud and I haven't, yes I have, I've found a little bit. So again, you could just add a small amount of that, but run it in that direction. And just add that to the top of that. You could either blend those pieces into the back. Definitely think about your blending. We're not looking for blocks of colour. So again, just a little bit more detail into the tail section. So that is as much as I want to share with you on this section of the make. So it's just around adding the body colour. So the next two video tutorials that we will look at is looking at the paws and covering those, and then we're going to look at the fabulous ears, and then the ears and how they're attached to your piece. So we're getting there. Hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to speaking with you again on the next one. Take care. Bye.